I don't normally do review videos, and I'm not going to necessarily say that this is a review video, but I'm going to talk about Resident Evil 3 for a while because I'm tired of typing about it. It really is what it boils down to. Resident Evil 3 Remake came out 8 days ago on the 3rd. There was a demo release before that, which encompassed pretty much the area. I'll say the area, part of the area of the first 25% of the game, where you could run around and do shit. And unlike the RPD demo, the one-shot RPD demo for Resident Evil 2 Remake, there wasn't a time limit, so you could with this demo you could actually see what the game was kind of about, except not really. Um, More on that in a minute. So this screen is my modded screen, PC obviously, to make it kind of look more like the real Resident Evil 3. You can see Nemesis's actual head from the first 20 years of the franchise is here, not his weird ass duct taped, garbage bagged, hefty head that he has in the first few encounters of the game. And then also there's just like a simple text mod that changes the coloring, so this is all red instead of the official new Resident Evil logo, which is part red, mostly white. Just some minimal things to try to get the game to feel like you're actually playing Resident Evil 3, because the reality is that you're not. I don't mean to jump on a bandwagon that a lot of people, like reviewers specifically, quote unquote media, game journalists, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see because I refuse to use my webcam anymore, that those people are saying, because most of them are giving the game really low scores, at least compared to people's expectations. I don't really know why people do this, what they're expecting. They're all assuming the game is going to get a 10 out of 10 rating from everyone that is actually going to analyze it and use logic, because it's not. People are giving it 58 out of 100, 6 out of 10, stuff like that. The problem with this game is really all focused around the same concept. Now, before Resident Evil 3 Remake, I don't even know what I just said. Before the remake came out, the producers in an interview had said this game is going to be a lot more action focused than Resident Evil 2 Remake, and there may have been a clause at the end of that sentence, but basically they were saying, don't expect this to be Resident Evil 2 Remake because it's different, which makes sense. It's a vague enough statement if you take it at face value, because Resident Evil 2, real Resident Evil 2 and real Resident Evil 3 were pretty different games. They all revolved around the same core gameplay, but Resident Evil 3 was clearly more action focused because they added certain game mechanics. You could do quick dodges. You had quick turn was introduced for the first time. It wasn't in any game before that. And there were also a lot more enemies. Not necessarily zombies, but there were more enemies. And you maybe got guns or weapons that were a bit more action focused, like the assault rifle, which wasn't actually even in the game. The only way you even got the assault rifle was if you were playing on assist mode. You started out with an assault rifle, and if you've played the original games, the automatic weapons or the flamethrower or the spark gun, stuff like that, it didn't really have ammo. It just had a counter. So you would get a flamethrower and it would start at 100% ammo, and then once you used it and it got to 0%, then it was done forever. You couldn't ever get any more ammo for it again. But again, that was in the assault rifle was only in assist mode, so uh, that's not really true to say that it was like more action focused because of the guns. But still, it was because you spend a lot more time basically running around dodging enemies or blowing stuff up than you did in Resident Evil 1 or 2. Suffice it to say. So it sounded like a reasonable, innocuous thing to say at that point, like, you know, X months ago, before anyone had actually ever played the game. But now that the game's out, you can see there was more to that statement. And people probably should have dug further into it. While this is tabbed out, this is the Resident Evil 3 Fluffy Manager 5000. It started with Resident Evil 2 Remake because it's the same engine, so it's the same tool. Like a lot of games, it has its own specific little mod tool where you load the mods, you unload the mods, whatever. So here's the core problem with Resident Evil 3 Remake that a lot of people don't seem to understand. Your typical Resident Evil gameplay, what people refer to as backtracking, this is like a Metroidvania, Castlevania Metroid kind of thing, where sections of the game are locked off because you have to discover items or complete objectives or puzzles or whatever in order to progress to those new areas. So it's like you start in a map that all technically exists in game, but you can only access parts of it at first, and then as you play more and more, you unlock more of the map. I mean, there's probably a textbook definition if you want to Google it, but that's what a Vania game is. So, people call it backtracking. Oh, I got to walk back through this area 16 times. I got to do this and that. Well, that's what Resident Evil is. That's the entire point of the game, of the game mechanics. Maybe not the entire point of the game, but you can still easily and successfully argue that Resident Evil is about solving puzzles to complete the story. The enemies and the terror, all that stuff, it's all ancillary to the actual game. But it's obviously part of the game. It's an important part of the game. So in Resident Evil 3 Remake, that's the problem. There is none of that gameplay. I mean, there is literally none of that gameplay. Whereas Resident Evil 2 Remake pretty much faithfully stuck to that formula of, running back and forth, getting the heart key, the diamond key, the such and such key, the spade key, blah, 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 in order to unlock more doors and do what you needed to do to finish the game. You don't do any of that in Resident Evil 3 Remake at all. When I say literally, I know I overused the word, but you literally don't do that at all, ever, at any point in Resident Evil 3 Remake. There are like two exceptions, but it's ridiculous to even say that because it's a pale comparison to any of the other Resident Evil games with a traditional gameplay. These are the only two traditional puzzles in Resident Evil 3 Remake. And when I say puzzles, I mean puzzles that you actually have to figure out and solve, either by brute force or by reading some clues or, seeing something on a wall, which, keep in mind, that doesn't apply to the safe combinations or the lock combinations on the lockers, because those aren't puzzles. That's literally just seeing the actual password in the game environment and then using it, versus the puzzles where it may explain to you in like a file, a manual or something that you picked up, but it's not right there in your face on the wall in game. So again, there's only two. These are the only two in the entire game.
stopped at Redstone Street. We need to reach Fox Park Station. Can you program that in?
Hey, I'm Super Cop. Consider it done.
Valid route confirmed.
Carlos, it's me. I finished inputting the subway route.
Jill, you are amazing. Tough as nails, too. Hurry back to the station. We'll make sure the subway's ready to...
Start devising vaccine.
So people are saying, oh, well, you know, they're saying, you know, I don't think people remember correctly because Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which is technically the title of the original game. That's how I'll differentiate it. In Nemesis, you were running around doing the same type of action stuff. Well, no, you weren't. You weren't, to be honest. I don't have Resident Evil 3 Nemesis memorized because, to be frank, it was never my favorite game in the franchise. I have friends who were like more attached to Resident Evil 3 than they were 1 or 2, whereas my favorite was always Resident Evil 2, and I didn't really care about the other games. You know, I still am one of those purist, like, you know, okay boomer type people that would prefer not to even address anything after Code Veronica as part of the same franchise, because really they aren't. They may have the same intellectual property, you know, the same character names, the same basic elements, but they're not the same game. They're not a Resident Evil game. But anyway, back to the point. So, I don't have the game memorized, like the whole thing in order, but in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, you had to do that same core gameplay. You know, you had to solve puzzles. Like there's a section after the bar, after the RPD, where you have to go into this like park area. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but with the statue of Mayor Michael Warren. So there's a whole puzzle involving the statue where you got to do this and that. You got to get a car battery. You got to get jumper cables and all this crap. And, you know, you got to solve a puzzle to eventually do something in the clock tower, if I recall correctly. So every step of the way in Nemesis, you know, you had to solve those puzzles to actually move on. But on top of that, you also had to deal with Nemesis at the same time. So, like, you'd be trying to solve a puzzle, and he would show up. And that's where the other core mechanic of Resident Evil 3 came in, which was also entirely omitted from this game. So Nemesis would show up, and the screen would flash white for like a few seconds. Not really fast, not like if you didn't do anything right away you were going to miss it, but it would flash white, and then you would have choices pop up on the screen that you had to select. You had to actually select those really quick and choose which one, because if you didn't, I don't think it defaulted to one, but I think it defaulted to like a third option where you just, you know, screw you, like you're going to do what's about to happen no matter what you want to do. So, you know, those choices would pop up on screen. It would be like, you know, go inside the RPD or fight the monster, or, you know, blow up the kitchen, or run out the back, for instance, in the restaurant, the diner section.
Oh no. It's him! Come on!
okay?
Just deal with it. That thing wants me dead. We've got to get out of here! No way! How did he find me? Over here!
Are you crazy? You could have barbecued both of us!
This way!
Those multiple choices, not that there were multiples, there were only ever two, but those choices led to a slight variety in gameplay each time you played through it. For instance, in the parking garage, you climb up a hole in the ground into the parking garage, and as soon as you do that, there's a van that has some like wooden boards or something propped up, as a lever. So like there were these heavy boxes at the top of the boards, and then somehow magically, for whatever 90s reason, the boxes would start sliding towards you, and you had to choose, jump out of the way or go back down into the hole or something like that. So if you chose to not jump up and dodge the boxes, you had to go down into the underground or whatever the hell it is, sewer, and it sucked because like if you did that, there were literally no items to pick up. You were kind of screwed for a minute. But in RE3 Remake, none of that exists at all. You have no choice, and it's not necessarily that you had any choice in the original, but you had the illusion of choice. So whether you pick to hide in the kitchen or whatever the other option was, the only thing that really changes is like the following cutscene. Some of them change the actual gameplay afterwards. So like in that first scene, if you choose to quote unquote fight the monster, then assuming you have the ammo to do it, you can incapacitate Nemesis outside the RPD, and he drops the first part for the Eagle, which is one of the 3 custom weapons in the game that he drops parts for. It's the best pistol in the game. And every single time that you have a choice to run or fight him, then you have an opportunity to incapacitate him, and he drops, just like in this game, he drops a case that has a weapon part in it, or he directly drops the weapon part. But in RE3 Remake, there is no illusion of choice. There is no choice at all. It's just, run from point A to point B, and then Nemesis will pop up, or more accurately, he'll pop down. He will literally pop out of nowhere. It's hard to see it because the game is so fast, and you're busy trying not to die. But he literally drops in from the sky. So like he could be on the same map, the same section of map, and you'll see it here in a second, outside the Moon's Donuts. He could be literally 30 feet away on the same section of map that's already loaded into the game, into memory, where you can see him if you just turned around. And then like as soon as you step on like a predetermined square of the map, like a certain distance away, he vanishes. He like jetpacks up into the sky, and then he drops down out of the air right in front of you, right on top of you. and then starts attacking you again, and you have to dodge him or you know, knock him out again. So it's just stupid. Like, it's not random. It's totally scripted. It just appears random if you aren't paying attention. That's not to say that the original game was random, because it was totally scripted too. Probably more so in this specific situation. But it didn't feel that way because it at least gave you a choice of what to do. You didn't have to fight him or dodge him all the time. Sometimes you did, like in the park area, there's a long alley where he comes at you, and there really isn't anything you can do except for dodge or incapacitate him, because you have to go through that area. You don't have a choice, because you have to unlock doors and, you know, do all this shit to solve a puzzle. But in RE3 Remake, the problem is the game starts with this totally on rails, albeit cool, scripted sequence where Nemesis is chasing you, and then it's like you escape him, and that's it. Like, he fucks off immediately afterwards for no good reason, really. He goes away because he's legitimately on the other side of a wall from you. Like, it's in the clip. He like drops a bunch of the building around himself, and so you're safe, like safe enough to start stumbling through an alley instead of run stumbling.
You okay?
What was that thing?
Damned if I know. But right now it's got a hard-on for the only 2 stars left in town. You and me. I'm not sticking around. Just look around you. The longer we wait, the more screwed we are.
How did this all happen so fast?
I don't know. One fucked up thing always leads to another. It's like Arclay on steroids. Hey! Hey, wait! Down here! God damn it!
We could be dreaming. How could this many people be infected? Brad! Here they come!
In here!
There's so many.
Door behind you, go!
it's stupid because it starts out with promise seeming like it's going to be cool, like Nemesis is going to chase you all the time, or at least often enough to keep you on your heels. But it doesn't. It's just once you play the game more than once, you can see the animatronics, so to speak. You know, like you can see the puppet strings because he always spawns in the same places every time that he does spawn. He doesn't necessarily always spawn in the first area of the game, but when he does, it's always in the same places. And that's the other thing is like in the beginning of the game, I want to say the first fourth maybe of the game, that's the only place where you actually encounter Nemesis in the wild. After that, it's all entirely intentional. Like it's all planned. There was no mistaking it for a clever game mechanic or an accident or anything like that. He only ever does this in the city block right outside the Redstone station, I believe, is the first one. It's the only subway station you can go to anyway. It's, you know, the subway station. Because every single time after that, it's clearly intentional. Like he was supposed to be there. It was a mandatory part to progress the story. I think a lot of people assumed, like I did when RE2 Remake came out, that there was just going to be an RE3. Like, you know, that there was no question about it. It was obviously going to happen. And then it was only like, you know, a few weeks after that that the leak, like the cover art leak, you know, accidentally, quote, air quote, hit the internet, you know, which I'm sure it was on purpose. Like someone at Capcom probably did it. Why wouldn't you? I would.
Jesus Christ!
So, it was kind of apparent to me already a year ago that the Nemesis mechanic wasn't going to work very well in this game because they jumped the shark. The problem is they put the Tyrant in Resident Evil 2 Remake in both scenarios, not that there were really different scenarios, in both characters' games, and he was almost exactly the same in both games. He stalked you literally all the time, from the time that you got to the east hallway in the RPD until the time that he died. And the only difference was, in Claire's game, Birkin kills him, like, immediately at the end of the RPD section. You get in that elevator down to the sewers or whatever, and Birkin just immediately, like, cuts him in half. Whereas on Leon's game, he chases you for the entirety of the RPD after the East Wing, and then you go into the sewers. He goes away for a while after Ada hits him with the truck, the SWAT man, and then there was like a brief 10-minute or so, depending on how long it takes you, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes. There's a brief period of time where you go into the sewers and, you do your thing, and then you have to play as Ada, and then the Tyrant comes back again. And then, she gets wounded or whatever, and then you switch back to Leon, and then you end up having to fight him again. Depending, it might be, it's been a while. It's been like a year. I don't remember if it's depending on scenario, because I remember just like RE2. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's him. I could be wrong. I don't know. Because I remember in real RE2, when you're in the lab at the subway, at the tram station, Ada throws a rocket launcher down to fight the Tyrant after he falls in the giant vat of molten metal and turns into a super Tyrant. So that fight is in RE2 also, but I think it's on Leon's campaign versus it was on Claire's campaign. But anyway, he doesn't finally die in Leon's game until that section, I'm pretty sure. I don't think it matters who you play first, because I think it's only on Leon's. But the point is, he chases you pretty much the entire game until you kill him. Versus Nemesis doesn't chase you at all, really. He kind of just appears. And you can see in the video clip what I'm talking about. Like, as soon as the Tyrant shows up, he follows you. He doesn't random spawn. He does technically. If you get too far away, there was a glitch where it was possible to actually spawn a second Tyrant, so there would be two of them at the same time. Because like there's a certain spot in the map where if you go long enough eluding the Tyrant, then he just respawns in a different area. I remember there's a YouTube video of someone that somehow glitched it, so like the Tyrant was just close enough on the edge of the zone that he, where he's supposed to despawn, that he didn't despawn, and the guy like got to the other edge of the zone where he force respawns. So there were two. But Nemesis in Resident Evil 3, he just he shows up when he wants, he leaves when he wants, he appears out of nowhere, he literally teleports across the screen, as you can see in that previous clip. And it's stupid. Like, I knew that they were going to ruin the mechanic because there's no reason really for the Tyrant to be hunting you the way he did in Resident Evil 2. I could understand on Claire's game because that's how it was in the original. There was no Tyrant in Leon's game in the original. I'm almost positive, unless you were doing Leon B. So, okay, it didn't matter what character. It was based on which scenario. So there was no Tyrant in the A scenario unless you were playing Claire A. I'm pretty sure. there was no Tyrant in Leon A, but there was in B. I think Claire B might not have had it. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point is that they overused the Tyrant mechanic in the remake, and they shouldn't have. Because the Tyrant, regardless of which scenario you're playing on the original game, the Tyrant only shows up like 5 times. There's the first time in the East Hall. There's another time in the second floor walkway in the lobby where he shows up. He also busts through a wall in the press room on the first floor, East hallway, and a couple of other places. But it's like 5 different places max. So, like I keep repeating, I knew it was a stupid ass idea in that they were going to be challenged to find a way to use Nemesis that didn't feel contrite and have people getting pissed off because they've already experienced it before. So I guess they decided to go with the scripted, infrequent, and annoying as fuck use of the Nemesis rather than just have him stalk you all the time. I think after releasing Resident Evil 2, there's nothing they could have done to make people happy about the Nemesis. Because people were going to complain either way, Like, people like me were going to say that they screwed it up by using the Tyrant so much. People were going to complain that they don't have the Nemesis attacking you enough, that they have him attacking you too much, etc., etc. So anyway, the point is, they did a shit job of using the Nemesis mechanic, which is one of the main problems with this game, because it's called Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, or the original was. So when one of the 3 core gameplay mechanics of your game, one of the few things that makes it stand out from the other 27 Resident Evil games is done wrong, you're not going to have a good time. You're not going to have a good game specifically. Besides that, the gameplay, besides those major glaring issues, the gameplay isn't terrible. It's, it's still like a moderately playable game. I don't know if I would say fun. It's worth a couple playthroughs, because you're going to have to play through it 5 times anyway to unlock everything before you uninstall it forever. But I definitely would never call this game a masterpiece. I would not say 10 out of 10. I wouldn't say it's better than the original, for sure. I definitely wouldn't say it's on the same same level as Resident Evil 2 Remake, or any of the weird ass accolades that people are giving this game that it doesn't deserve. It's a decent game. We'll leave it at that.